from the book of James, and let me read this to you. My brothers and sisters, do you, with your acts of favoritism, really believe in our glorious Lord Jesus Christ? For if a person with gold rings and in fine clothes come into your assembly, and if a poor person in dirty clothes also comes in, and if you take notice of the one wearing fine clothes and say, "Have a seat here, please," while to the one who is poor you say, "Stand there," or "Sit at my feet," have you not made distinctions among yourselves and become judges with evil thoughts? You do well if you really fulfill the royal law according to the Scripture. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. And then reading from the Gospel of Mark. For there he, meaning Jesus, set out and went away to the region of Tyre. He entered a house and did not want anyone to know he was there, yet he could not escape notice. But a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit immediately heard about him, and she came and bowed down at his feet. Now the woman was a Gentile of Syrophoenician origin. She begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. He said to her, "Let the children be fed first, for it is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." But she answered him, "Sir, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs." Then he said to her, "For saying that, you may go. The demon has left your daughter." So she went home, found the child lying on the bed, and the demon gone. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. In the book Peace Like a River, this is a book about Jeremiah Land, a God-fearing, medical school dropout turned janitor, through whom God happens to work the occasional healing miracle. One miracle that stands out is the healing of the infected face of the pompous school superintendent Holgren, just moments after the superintendent had fired the janitor unjustly, the janitor Jeremiah. Jeremiah's son Reuben saw this whole thing take place. First the firing, and then the healing. Reuben described it like this. He said, "Dad lifted his hand, touched Holgren's face, and then pulled away." Reuben said, "I saw that Holgren's face had changed. The constant seepage was gone. I knew what had happened, and it made me mad enough to spit. What business had my dad in healing that man?" That is the question that Jesus' disciples asked as Jesus ignored Jewish social boundaries and began healing Gentiles. In the gospel reading from Mark, Jesus is tired. Tired, perhaps, of being followed by so many crowds. Tired of the Pharisees continually challenging his every move. Tired that he just needed to get away. And so Jesus leaves Galilee, heads toward a house in the Gentile region of Tyre. Nobody would look for a Jew inside a Gentile house, and especially in Tyre. You see, the people of Tyre and the neighboring province of Sidon had fought against the Israelites, and there was nothing but hatred between these peoples. On this day in Tyre, a woman from this region, a Gentile, comes to see Jesus. We don't know just what she already knew about Jesus, who he was, But she knew this much. She knew that the answer to her problem, the healing for her child, lay in one person, this one Jesus. The gospel writer Matthew's telling of this story says his disciples try to get rid of the woman. They tell Jesus to send her away. This pushy woman, this one who keeps shouting, "Have mercy, Lord, have mercy." But no matter what the difficulty, no matter what the obstacles that have been put in her way, she persisted. "Have mercy, Lord," she cried. "Cast the demon out of my daughter." Instead of giving her the compassionate response that we expect from Jesus, Jesus says, "Let the children be filled first." Children referring to the Jews, the people of God. Let the children be filled first, for it's not fair to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. By any standards, that is a profound insult. Dogs, dirty, little mongrels, the Gentiles. The disciples watched carefully what Jesus would do, and they sighed with relief at Jesus' response, and they showed the woman the door. But she will not be moved. In a rural neighborhood Bible study in Mexico City, an elderly woman responded to this story. She said, "I see a woman of faith. I see a woman who knew that Jesus had the power to heal her daughter. I see how she had faith and kept budding until her request was granted." And when she was questioned about her reference to budding, she said, "Sometimes the calf has to butt the udder to get the milk." Is this woman in the story budding, challenging Jesus? Is she confronting the disciples and Jesus to see her, to see the Gentiles as God's people too? Does she perhaps see a twinkle in Jesus' eye? Because maybe Jesus is trying to teach the disciples a lesson. Perhaps she recognizes Jesus' exhaustion and thinks that she can wear him down. Does she hear challenge in Jesus' tone? We don't know. All we know is that this woman, this mother, desperate for her daughter's life, refuses to be dismissed. She looks Jesus straight in the eye and says, "Yes, Lord, but even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs." Cyril of Alexandria, one of the early church fathers, said, "We should so pray as to make God ashamed if God does not answer us." That's a pretty bold statement. We should so pray as to make God ashamed if God does not answer us. Maybe that's what the woman was doing. It's as if she's saying, "Shame on you, Jesus, if you don't answer my plea." When she gets down on her hands and knees and cries out, "Jesus, have mercy on me." Here's a woman who challenges Jesus with grit, with grace, perhaps a little wit. She has an attitude. And she says, with words and body language, "I am not going away. By all means, feed the children, but I bet you have some crumbs, even for me." This woman pushes wide open the door of healing and salvation. study Mark's Gospel. This story marks a turning point in Mark's story. The very next story following the woman is that of another healing in Gentile territory. A deaf and a mute man is brought by his friends to Jesus, and Jesus heals him. And still in Gentile territory, Jesus goes on to feed 4,000 hungry people with 7 loaves of bread and baskets of crumbs left over. And immediately after this miracle picnic, Jesus and the disciples are on a boat, and the disciples worry again when they've forgotten to bring bread for lunch. Jesus is amazed, perhaps disappointed by their blindness. Jesus says, "Don't you get it? It's not just about physical hunger. Don't you see that I am the bread of life, and there's enough of me to go around even for the Gentiles?" With this woman's encounter with Jesus, we get a glimpse of the inclusiveness of God's kingdom. The doors are opened wide. There are no boundaries on God's grace. Anyone can come and find mercy. Sarah Miles writes, "I was a middle-aged woman set in my ways when I decided to be baptized. And as the water poured over my head, I realized the big problem with my new religion. I couldn't choose who else was my brother or sister." In his letter to the church people, James wrote, "My brothers and sisters, as believers in our Lord Jesus Christ, do not show partiality or favoritism." Many of us learned or are still learning about social boundaries in our school cafeterias. Think back. We sat or sit at tables depending on what sport we played or if we played at all. We sat at our tables if we were deemed popular or unpopular. Sometimes we sat at a table because of our race or the language that we spoke in. If we were studious, we would choose one area. If we had more or less money, we sat in another. After our lunch period, we went back to class. We didn't have the safety of our little group anymore. And our best chance to cross a social boundary had just passed. As followers of Jesus, we continue to learn, to grow, to struggle each day in each choice that we make. Around our dinner tables, in our offices, our neighborhoods, our social organizations, our classrooms. Each choice we make about people who are different than us, who are not one of us, who maybe smell, whose clothes are different, who speak funny, who perhaps we invite to join with us. We make choices around questions of sexual orientation, of racial identity, at the boundary lines between nations and cultures. Choices of who is acceptable and who is not. Mark's story of the Gentile woman shows us what we are often so slow to grasp. That God shows no partiality. That God, the triune God, Father, Son, and Spirit, is determined that the circle of love that they share should be ceaselessly, shamelessly inclusive. None left out. That is the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so the question for each of us us this day, where do we see ourselves? Have we entered into the open door of God's love for all? Do we see ourselves inside that door, and are we closing it now to others? Are we perhaps the ones left out because we choose not to be part of God's inclusive love? Who is under the table in our lives?